Country music has always told the truth about drinking, about the bottle that promises to help and only knows how to destroy, about the pill that gets you through the show and then gets you through the next one, and then gets you through everything until there is nothing left it has not touched. These are 8 country artists whose gifts were extraordinary and whose addictions were real. Some of them survived, some did not. All of them paid a price that no amount of talent could protect them from. Number 8, Glen Campbell, addicted to cocaine and alcohol.
I've been walking these streets so long.
Glen Campbell arrived in Hollywood from Delight, Arkansas in 1960 with a guitar, no money, and a level of natural ability that studio musicians talked about for decades. He became one of the most in-demand session players in Los Angeles, recording with the Beach Boys, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, and dozens of others before he had a single hit of his own. When his solo career took off in the late 1960s with Wichita Lineman and Galveston, and by the time I get to Phoenix, he was already deep into what he later described as a cocaine and alcohol decade that ran from the early 1970s through the early 1980s without interruption. He said in interviews that he spent those years snorting cocaine and drinking before coming home angry to whichever wife he was married to at the time. He was married 4 times. His relationship with Tanya Tucker from 1980 to 1981, he was 44, she was 22, was the most publicly chaotic period of a very chaotic decade. The two of them together were, by most accounts of people who knew them, a mutual amplification of each other's worst impulses. His third wife, Kim Woolen, whom he married in 1982 and stayed with for the rest of his life, eventually recorded his drunken behavior on a tape recorder and played it back to him. He said later that hearing himself was what finally made him understand what he had been doing. He stopped cocaine first, then eventually alcohol after a 2003 DUI arrest in Arizona in which he kicked a police officer. He received 10 days in jail and completed a drug and alcohol treatment program.
Washed away like the snow and the rain.
Campbell was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2011 and announced it publicly, an act of transparency that was considered unusual and brave for a man of his generation. He recorded one final album, Ghost on the Canvas, and conducted a farewell tour while the disease was still allowing him to perform. Footage from the tour shows him forgetting lyrics mid-song, looking to his band for help, and then finishing the song anyway. He died on August 8, 2017. The talent that had been apparent since he first picked up a guitar was still audible in his voice until almost the end. The cocaine and the alcohol did not take that from him. The Alzheimer's did. Number 7, Mindy McCready, addicted to prescription drugs and alcohol. Mindy McCready was 20 years old when 10,000 Angels went double platinum in 1996, and 21 when Guys Do It All the Time hit number 1. She was being compared to Shania Twain. People in Nashville were talking about her as a generational talent. 2 years later, her record label was already disappointed with the commercial performance of her follow-up albums, and she had begun the legal and personal spiral that would define the next 17 years of her life more than any record she made. In 2004, she was arrested for using a fraudulent prescription to obtain OxyContin at a Nashville pharmacy, pleaded guilty, and was placed on 3 years probation. In 2005, she was arrested for DUI, was beaten so severely by her boyfriend, Billy McKnight, that she described gurgling on blood, was hospitalized twice for drug overdoses that both appeared to be suicide attempts, and was charged with misdemeanor battery, identity fraud, and multiple probation violations, all within the same calendar year. She appeared on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew in 2009. She lost custody of her older son. She fled to Arkansas with him anyway, and was found hiding in a closet with the child. Her boyfriend and producer, David Wilson, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at their home in Heber Springs, Arkansas, on January 13, 2013. On February 17, 2013, 35 days later, she was found dead on the same front porch from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. She was 37 years old.
You look like you just took
Her final song was released the day after she died. It was called I'll See You Yesterday. The title was the last thing she posted on social media before she died. She left behind two young sons, Xander, age 6, and Zane, aged 9 months. The double platinum debut album that had made her famous was 17 years old. Country music has rarely produced a more complete portrait of what addiction does to a life when it arrives before the life has had a chance to establish itself. Number 6, Hank Williams Jr., addicted to alcohol and drugs.
The interest is up and the stock market down and you...
Hank Williams Jr. was 4 years old when his father died. By the time he was 8, his mother Audrey had him on stage performing Hank Sr.'s songs in front of audiences who came specifically to watch a small boy perform his dead father's music. By 17, he was married. By his early 20s, he was touring 200 nights a year doing an imitation of a man he had never actually known. And the pressure of being the living monument to Hank Williams was doing to him exactly what being Hank Williams had done to his father. He got drunk. He got into drugs. He attempted suicide in 1974 at the age of 25. A doctor told him afterward, and this is the exact quote from Williams's own recounting, "Your dad died at 29. You're going to beat him. You're going to die at 26.
We make our own whiskey and our own smoke too. Ain't too many...
That threat woke him up enough that he moved to Alabama, started recording with Charlie Daniels and Waylon Jennings, and for the first time began to build something that felt like his own identity rather than his father's ghost. Then on August 8, 1975, 6 weeks before his breakthrough album was scheduled for release, he went hiking on Ajax Peak in western Montana with a rancher named Dick Willie and Willie's 11-year-old son, Walt. The snow beneath him collapsed. He fell 500 feet. He struck a boulder face first. His nose was gone. His teeth and parts of his jaw fell out in his hands. His eye was out of the socket. A fracture in his skull had left brain exposed through the hole in his forehead. He wrote in his autobiography, "I put my hands up to feel my nose. Where my nose should be, there is nothing there."
Only get mugged if you go downtown.
He survived. 2 years and 9 surgeries later, he emerged wearing a beard and sunglasses to hide the scars, and built one of the most successful careers in country music history. 27 #1 hits, the Monday Night Football theme, the family tradition. He never tried to be his father again. But the addiction that had been present since his teenage years did not disappear with the accident or the surgeries. It ran underneath the success for decades, complicating everything, costing him marriages and years. He eventually found a version of control. He never fully escaped the inheritance his father left him. Not the talent and not the demons that came with it.
No, you can't stop us now and you can't make us run. But with it...
Number 5, Tanya Tucker, addicted to cocaine and alcohol.
What your mama...
Tanya Tucker was 13 years old when she first performed Delta Dawn, and 17 when she recorded the version that made her famous. She was signed to Columbia Records, produced by Billy Sherrill, and singing about a woman losing her mind in a small southern town at an age when most girls were still in high school. The voice that came out of her was raw and powerful in a way that made Nashville executives uncomfortable and audiences unable to look away. She had her first #1 at 17. By her early 20s, she was one of the biggest names in country music and had developed a reputation for hard partying that was already threatening to overshadow the music.
People never took the time to mind the young...
Her relationship with Glen Campbell from 1980 to 1981, she was 22, he was 44, was conducted almost entirely in the tabloids and left both of them in worse shape than they had been before. Tucker later said Campbell was the love of her life. Campbell later said their time together was the most chaotic period of his life. Both of them were using cocaine heavily throughout the relationship. After the breakup, Tucker moved to Nashville, and the cocaine and alcohol continued into the mid-1980s. Drained emotionally, financially, and physically, she later said, she was fading into oblivion. Her father stepped in and brought her back to Tennessee. She received a 1-album deal with Capitol Nashville in 1986 and delivered a gold album. A full comeback followed.
30-some-odd years ago, a young man came...
In 1988, her family staged an intervention, and she entered the Betty Ford Center for 6 weeks to treat her cocaine and alcohol addiction. "I knew once I tried cocaine, It would help me lose weight, she told Rolling Stone in 2019. I felt a little overweight. The admission was characteristically direct. Tucker has never been someone who softened the difficult parts of her story. She got sober, went on to have more than 24 top 10 country hits through the 1990s, won 2 Grammys, including Album of the Year in 2019 for While I'm Livin' at the age of 60, and became the living proof that what the addiction years had cost her was not the voice or the ability, only the time.
Labor to the county jail.
Number 4, Tammy Wynette, addicted to prescription, painkillers and Demerol. Tammy Wynette's addiction did not begin with a choice to get high. It began in 1970 with a hysterectomy that went wrong. Infections, internal scar tissue, complications that sent her back to the operating table repeatedly over the following years. The doctors prescribed Demerol for the pain. The pain was real, the relief was real, and over time the doses that had been effective stopped being effective, and the prescriptions that had been adequate stopped being adequate. And the woman who had recorded Stand By Your Man and DIVORCE and been named the First Lady of Country Music was injecting Demerol into herself on her tour bus between shows because no other option remained.
So we spell out the words we do.
Her road crew administered some of the injections. A doctor on retainer trained them how. When her regular physicians recognized what was happening and cut off her prescriptions, she found other doctors in other cities who would give her the same medications without knowing her history. Members of her crew found used hypodermic needles under her mattress on the tour bus. She entered the Betty Ford Center in November 1986 and announced it publicly, which was considered a significant act of courage at the time. She came out, went back on the road, went back to the pills. The cycle repeated. She underwent more than 30 surgeries across her lifetime. The pain that had started everything never fully stopped. She was hospitalized so often in the early 1970s that one biographer noted she was in the hospital nearly a dozen times in 1973 alone. She died on April 6, 1998, at 55 years old. The official cause listed by her doctors was a blood clot in the lungs. Her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her physicians and her husband, George Ritchie, alleging they had failed to seek medical help in the days before her death. Her body was exhumed in 1999 for an independent autopsy. The pathologist found multiple potent drugs in her system and determined the cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia. No criminal charges were ever filed. The lawsuit was settled confidentially. What is not in dispute is that she spent the last 28 years of her life in genuine physical pain, that the medication she took for that pain took everything else from her gradually and then completely, and that the voice that had sold 20 million records was silenced at 55 by something that started with a surgery that should have been routine. Number 3. Dottie West, addicted to alcohol and drugs.
Here comes more tears to cry.
Dottie West won the first Grammy Award ever given for Best Female Country Vocal Performance at the 7th Annual Grammy Awards on April 13, 1965, for her 1964 recording of Here Comes My Baby. She was the first woman in country music history to earn a platinum album as a solo artist. She wrote the Coca-Cola jingle Country Sunshine in 1973, and the company gave her a lifetime contract. She recorded a series of #1 duets with Kenny Rogers in the late 1970s and crossed over to the pop chart. She was a Grand Ole Opry member since 1964. She had built, across 3 decades, one of the most distinguished careers in the history of the format.
Here comes old memory.
By the mid-1980s, the career was fading. She left her long-term label, married a sound engineer 23 years younger than her, and spent beyond any reasonable limit. The marriage ended in 1990. Her manager sued her. The bank foreclosed on her house. The IRS put her possessions up for public auction to recover over $1 million in back taxes. Her awards, her stage costumes, the memorabilia from 3 decades of performing sold off one item at a time, while people lined up to buy them. She declared bankruptcy. She lost her car. She had been hooked on drugs and alcohol through the final years of the collapse, a detail confirmed in her biography. And by the time everything financial had been stripped away, she was living in the parking lot of the Opryland Hotel on her tour bus. Then they took the bus too.
Once more I'll understand.
On September 1st, 1991, she needed to get to the Grand Ole Opry for a Friday night performance. Her car was gone. Her 81-year-old neighbor, George Thaxton, offered to drive her. He accelerated down the freeway exit ramp at 55 miles per hour on a 25-mile-per-hour curve. The car went airborne and struck a concrete divider. Dottie was badly injured internally, but initially appeared to be relatively okay at the scene. She died 4 days later, on September 4th, 1991, at 58 years old. She was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2018, 27 years after her death. The woman who had built everything and watched it all go in the space of a few years was gone before anyone could acknowledge what she had actually been worth. Number 2. Randy Travis, Addicted to Alcohol.
You may think that I'm talking foolish.
Randy Travis started drinking at 11 years old. By his teenage years in North Carolina, he was in serious trouble. Drugs, alcohol, break-ins, and the only thing that kept him out of a correctional facility was a club owner named Lib Hatcher, who saw him perform, believed in his talent, and essentially took over his life. She got him sober enough to record. She became his manager. She became his wife. She guided him from a troubled teenager playing local bars to one of the most important figures in the history of country music. The man who brought traditional country back to radio in the mid-1980s, when the format had spent a decade drifting toward pop. His 1986 debut album, Storms of Life, was certified triple platinum, selling 3 million copies. He had 23 #1 singles. He won 7 Grammys. He was the artist a generation of country musicians cited as the reason they believed traditional country could still work.
Oh, baby, I'm gonna love you for.
In 2012, the marriage had ended and the career had faded, and the drinking that had been a problem since he was 11 years old came back with everything it had been accumulating. In February 2012, a police officer found him at 1:30 in the morning behind the wheel of a 1998 Pontiac parked outside the First Baptist Church in Sanger, Texas, slurring his words and stumbling, an open wine bottle in the passenger seat. He was cited for public intoxication. 6 months later, on August 7, 2012, an employee at his regular convenience store in Tioga, Texas, called 911 to report that a naked man had come in asking for cigarettes and become agitated when he could not pay. A second call came in, almost immediately, about a nude man lying by the side of the road. Officers arrived to find Randy Travis, bruised, smelling of alcohol, lying near a Pontiac that had crashed into construction barricades. He refused field sobriety tests. When officers told him he was coming in, he threatened to shoot and kill them.
I'll be faithful.
His blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. He was sentenced to 2 years probation, ordered to complete 30 days at an inpatient treatment facility, and fined $2,000. 1 year later, in July 2013, he suffered a massive stroke caused by a virus attacking his heart. He flatlined 3 times. Doctors performed emergency brain surgery. He spent weeks in a medically induced coma. He was told he would never sing again. When he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in October 2016, he took the microphone from his wheelchair and sang Amazing Grace. The audience wept. Many in the crowd joined in and sang with him.
Makes a young girl's brown hair turn gray.
Number 1. Johnny Cash. Amphetamines, barbiturates, alcohol. Johnny Cash took his first amphetamine pill in 1957, and it gave him what he was looking for: the energy to keep performing through a schedule that had no natural stopping point, the confidence to walk out in front of a crowd, the sense that he could do more and go further than his body alone would allow. By 1960, he was addicted. What happened next is one of the most thoroughly documented descents in American music history, because Cash was never particularly interested in hiding it, and because the consequences kept becoming public whether he wanted them to or not. Every car he owned during the 1960s, and some he did not own. He was kicked off the Grand Ole Opry in 1965 after throwing a microphone stand through the stage footlights and then crashing a borrowed Cadillac the same night. breaking his nose and jaw. He was arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border on October 4, 1965, when customs agents found 688 dexedrine capsules and 475 Equinil tablets hidden inside his guitar case. They suspected heroin. What they found were prescription drugs he had sent a cab driver across the border to buy for him in a Juarez bar while he waited in the back seat and slid down lower every time someone looked his way. Because they were technically prescription medications, the charges were reduced to a misdemeanor. He paid a $1,000 fine and went back on the road and was back on the pills within a month. In 1967, he was arrested in Walker County, Georgia, with a bag of prescription drugs, attempted to bribe the arresting officer, and failed. He had dropped to 155 pounds. At 6 feet 1 inch tall, he looked, as one journalist wrote at the time, like a man in the process of disappearing. Him is well documented. June Carter, who had spent years throwing his pills away and reading him Bible passages when he screamed at her, refused to give up. He checked himself into the Nickajack Cave in Tennessee in 1967 with a flashlight and enough pills to kill himself, intending to crawl so far in that he would not find his way out. He later said he lay in the cave until the flashlight died, and then felt what he described as the presence of God, and crawled back toward the light. He asked June Carter to marry him on stage in February 1968. She said yes. He stayed sober for 7 years. He relapsed in 1977. He relapsed again in 1983 after being kicked by an ostrich on his farm and prescribed painkillers for the resulting injury. He entered the Betty Ford Clinic in 1983, Cumberland Heights in 1989, and the Loma Linda Behavioral Medicine Center in 1992. He and June remained married until her death on May 15, 2003. He died on September 12, 2003, 4 months later. His death, like his life, arrived with an explanation built into it. "I was taking the pills for a while," he once said, "and then the pills started taking me."